Hey everybody, good to see you. Doing chapter 8, lesson 3. Helping myself to some of these flip sides right here. Fantastic cookie. Don't know if you've ever had it before. Delish. Anyway, chapter 8, lesson 3. We're going to keep talking about how America's cultural identity changes in the 1920s. We covered all this kind of return to normalcy stuff, right? Where we were going back to the way things used to be. We've got America that's really kind of in turmoil with the 1920s, Red Scare, economic turmoil, racial turmoil. So we have an America that's really kind of at unrest, trying to find itself again in the 1920s. So what you should not be surprised by, I guess, is kind of what I'm getting at here, is that some of the old attitudes about our culture, about who we are as a people, from the Gilded Age, are going to return as well. And it makes sense, right? I mean, if Harding and Coolidge and Hoover want to go back to the way that things were economically, then they might also want to go back to the way things were culturally. So there's going to be a couple of really big changes going on here in the 1920s culturally. We're going to see a return of nativism. That's going to be one. We're going to see the beginning of something called the new morality, where women and young people really start to kind of push for their own sense of identity as they kind of gain more of an economic foothold in the 1920s, of their own identity. We're going to see pushback against some of these new moralities that these individuals want to have, and people that don't want to see that much change that fast in society. And then we're going to see also a push, really our country almost split half and half, for something called prohibition, as America kind of was destroying itself in the 1920s and before with alcohol. So we're going to see kind of three big changes here: this issue of nativism, new morality, and then prohibition. That's our plan anyway. Now let's start with this conversation on how has the culture identity of the United States changed over time, by hearkening back to this concept of nativism. Remember that nativism is this belief that your native land is under threat, right? It has to be protected, as it were, from immigrants, those dangerous immigrants that are coming to our country. They're taking jobs, they're working for lower pay, they're doing things that make it our culture under threat, right? Remember the way they changed our cities with different languages and foods and clothing and culture, and all these different ways our cities and our urban areas changed, and that a lot of Americans said, well, this is not, time out, 30 seconds, time out, so I don't want to be a part of this, it's making me nervous. So what we want to do is take a look at how that old idea of the 1870s returns. And those European immigrants that we've talked so much about are the ones that are going to be blamed for the problems of the 1920s, right? Because think about it. Red Scare, hello. Russians, Eastern Europeans, right? Hello. When we talk about people committing crimes, it's the impoverished, right? Well, all of the poor people happen to be from Eastern and Southern Europe because those are the new immigrants. So if we're talking about poor people committing crimes, then it's criminals coming from the immigrant pool. So it's their fault that we have all this crime. All the kinds of issues that we see really stressing out our country, working for low wages, can't afford cost of living, all those things we blame on immigrants. And I'll give you a classic example of how that hatred of immigrants can really alter the lives of people for good. The example I'm going to give you is the arrest of two Italian immigrants, two guys named Sacco and Vanzetti. Sacco and Vanzetti, these Italian immigrants, the factory workers, they're anarchists actually. They can't stand the fact that the American government treats the immigrant so bad. And they break into the factory and they're stealing the money because they're not paid at all. They wanted the money for themselves. And accidentally, boom, boom, two guys get shot, killed, dead. So what you end up with are these two Italian immigrants, Sacco and Vanzetti, being arrested. And the evidence is kind of murky. People aren't really sure if Sacco and Vanzetti did it. I mean, if you laid all the evidence out and you took a look at it, it's kind of questionable whether or not Sacco and Vanzetti actually committed this crime. But it doesn't matter to Americans because they're Italian immigrants. And so the argument that Sacco and Vanzetti make, that you can see here on the slide, is that this case is about prejudice because of their ethnic origin. Vanzetti himself says that, you didn't convict me because I committed some crime. You didn't convict me because I'm a murderer or a burglar. You convicted me because you have this hatred in you. That's why you convicted me. That fear, that resentment. And really, that fear and resentment is worldwide. And so is the reaction against it. There are protests that erupt all over America, all over the world, to try and free and promote innocence for Sacco and Vanzetti. Because in the eyes of a lot of people, this isn't about an actual crime. It's a trial on immigration. Because Americans were afraid that Uncle Sam was being swallowed up. Swallowed up by the foreigner. I mean, look at that, right? There's Uncle Sam right in the middle, being swallowed up by that foreigner. His head's already swallowed by this Eastern or Southern European. Over here, his feet are being swallowed up by an Asian immigrant. They're afraid that our culture is going to be changing. And they don't like that change because they don't know what it's going to mean. So they're going to push our politicians because of this fear, this nativism, to make change, to slow immigration, to stop it, to defend traditional American culture.